Imagine you find a corpse in your home. But here's the shocking twist. That corpse is believed to be you and you're still alive. In Agatha Christie's sparkling Cyanide, audacious, this is exactly what happens. A woman receives news of her own death and must attend her own funeral. But who is the dead woman really? And why does everyone think she's dead? This story revolves around identity theft, double lives, and a deadly conspiracy. In this novel, Christie presents us not just a murder, but an existential crisis. In today's podcast, we're diving deep into one of the Queen of Crime's most psychologically complex mysteries. A story where champagne glasses hide deadly secrets, where a glamorous birthday party becomes a stage for murder, and where the past refuses to stay buried. But before we begin, let me ask you this. How well do you really know the people sitting at your dinner table? Because in this novel, Christie proves that the most dangerous person might be the one closest to you, smiling across a candlelight. Let's start with a toast, but maybe check your glass first. Our story begins with a tragedy that has already happened. 1 year ago, at the prestigious Luxembourg Restaurant in London, a beautiful young woman named Rosemary Barton died at her own birthday celebration. Picture this. It's an elegant evening. 6 people gathered around a table adorned with flowers and flickering candles. Rosemary Barton, stunning in her evening gown, radiating youth and beauty, sits surrounded by her husband George, her sister Iris. The cause? Cyanide poisoning. Potassium cyanide, to be precise, one of the fastest-acting poisons known to humanity. The official verdict: suicide. The coroner's inquest concluded that Rosemary, suffering from depression, had taken her own life. The case was closed. The mourners dispersed. Life went on. But did it really? Because this is Agatha Christie we're talking about, and nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Let's meet the players in this deadly game. George Barton, Rosemary's widowed husband. A wealthy businessman, solid, reliable, some might say boring. He's in his 40s, financially successful but emotionally reserved. George loved Rosemary deeply, perhaps more than she loved him. Their marriage was comfortable for him. But was it enough for her? Iris Murley, Rosemary's younger sister, living in Rosemary's shadow all her life. Iris is quieter, less flamboyant, but possesses a depth her sister lacked. After Rosemary's death, she continues to live with George. There's an unspoken tension between them. Is it just shared grief or something more? Stephen Faraday, a rising politician with a bright future ahead, married to the socially ambitious Sandra. Stephen represents ambition and careful calculation. But there are whispers about his past with Rosemary. Sandra Faraday, Stephen's wife, elegant and aristocratic. She's climbed the social ladder and knows exactly how to maintain her position. Cold, controlled, and fiercely protective of her husband's career and reputation. Anthony Brown, mysterious and charming. Anthony is the wild card in this story. He arrived in Rosemary's life shortly before her death, and his presence disturbed the established order. Who is he really? And what was his relationship with Rosemary? Ruth Lessing, George's ultra-efficient secretary. She's been by his side for years, managing his business and, some might say, his life. Ruth is intelligent, capable, and utterly devoted to George. But is her devotion purely professional? These 6 people were all at that fatal birthday dinner. One of them knows what really happened. One of them might be a murderer. Now we jump forward 1 year. George Barton has been living with his grief, trying to move on. But then something happens that changes everything. George receives anonymous letters. Not just one, but several. And these letters contain a bombshell accusation. Rosemary didn't commit suicide. She was murdered. At first, George dismisses them. Crank letters, he thinks. The work of some disturbed individual. But the letters are persistent, detailed, and they plant a seed of doubt in his mind that grows into an obsession. George begins to reconsider everything about that night. The official story starts to crumble under scrutiny. Why would Rosemary kill herself? Yes, she had been depressed, but was it severe enough for suicide? And if someone murdered her, who and why? George becomes consumed with finding the truth. He's not a detective, not a man of action or investigation. He's a businessman, methodical and logical. So he approaches his problem the way he would approach a business challenge, with planning and strategy. And he comes up with a plan. A dangerous, audacious plan. George decides to recreate that fatal birthday party. Same restaurant, same table, same people, exactly 1 year later. His reasoning? The murderer will be there. And if he can recreate the conditions of that night, perhaps he can force the killer to reveal themselves. It's a plan born of desperation and grief, and it's extraordinarily risky. But George is determined. He sends out invitations, books the Luxembourg Restaurant, arranges everything to mirror that tragic evening. But here's where Christie's genius shines. George confides in Ruth Lessing, his secretary. He needs someone to know what he's doing, someone to observe and help him. Ruth is horrified by the plan, but agrees to help. She's always been there for George, and she won't abandon him now. The invitations go out. The responses come back. Everyone accepts. Stephen and Sandra Faraday will attend. Iris, of course, lives with George. Anthony Brown agrees to come. And 2 additional guests are invited to fill out the table. Colonel Race, a friend of George's with connections to intelligence services, and a young woman to balance the numbers. The stage is set. The players are assembling. But George Barton is playing a deadly game, and he doesn't realize just how deadly it will become. Before we get to that fateful dinner, we need to understand Rosemary Barton, because Christie, in her brilliance, makes us question not just who killed Rosemary, but who Rosemary really was. Through flashbacks and memories, we discover that Rosemary was complex and contradictory. She was beautiful, vivacious, the center of attention wherever she went. Men were drawn to her like moths to a flame. But beauty can be a curse as much as a blessing. Rosemary was unhappy in her marriage to George, not because he was cruel or unkind. Quite the opposite. He was too safe, too predictable, too boring. Rosemary craved excitement, passion, danger. She wanted to feel alive. And so she had affairs. Or at least, it strongly suggested she did. Stephen Faraday, the ambitious politician, had been in love with her years ago. Did that love rekindle? Anthony Brown entered her life with his mysterious charm. Were they lovers? But here's the twist that Christie masterfully reveals. Rosemary was also vulnerable, insecure, and deeply lonely. Her beauty was armor, her vivacity a mask. Underneath, she was searching for something she could never quite name. In the months before her death, Rosemary's behavior became erratic. She was depressed, yes, but also frightened. She told Iris she was afraid. Of what? Of whom? She never said. This is crucial to understanding the mystery. Was Rosemary killed because of what she knew? Because of who she was involved with? Or because she represented a threat to someone? Now we arrive at the reconstructed dinner party. The same table at the Luxembourg Restaurant. The same 6 people who were there a year ago, plus Colonel Race and a young woman named Ruth Lessing. Yes, George's secretary is actually at the table this time. The atmosphere is thick with tension. Everyone knows why they're there. George has made it clear in his invitations that he wants to discuss Rosemary's death, that he has doubts about the suicide verdict. Imagine the scene. The same luxurious restaurant, the same elegant table settings, champagne being poured into crystal glasses. But instead of celebration, there's fear and suspicion in the air. Stephen Faraday is nervous, constantly looking at his wife. Sandra is ice cold, her aristocratic composure barely hiding her anger at being put through this ordeal. Anthony Brown is watchful, his eyes missing nothing. Iris is pale and frightened, not understanding why George is doing this. And George? George is playing his role, trying to steer the conversation, to provoke a reaction, to force someone to reveal their guilt. The champagne is served. The same champagne that killed Rosemary a year ago. And then George Barton suddenly gasps, clutches his throat, and collapses across the table. Cyanide. Again. The same poison that killed Rosemary has now killed George. The murderer has struck twice. This is where Christie introduces her true detective figure. Colonel Race is not a bumbling police inspector or an eccentric amateur sleuth. He's a former intelligence officer, sharp, experienced, and world-weary. Race reveals that he wasn't just a dinner guest. George had contacted him before the dinner, shared his suspicions, and asked for help. Race had agreed to attend as an observer, to watch for anything suspicious. But he failed to prevent George's murder. Now he's determined to solve both deaths. Race quickly takes command of the investigation. The restaurant is sealed. The police are called. Everyone at the table is a suspect, and no one is allowed to leave. The questioning begins. Race is methodical, patient, and devastatingly perceptive. He listens not just to what people say, but to what they don't say. He watches body language, notices hesitations, observes glances between suspects, and slowly a picture begins to emerge. A picture of secrets, lies, and dangerous liaisons. As Race investigates, the secrets start tumbling out like dominoes. Stephen and Rosemary, they were having an affair. Stephen, the ambitious politician, was risking everything for passion with his old flame. Sandra knew, or at least suspected. This gave Sandra a powerful motive. Rosemary was a threat to everything she'd built. Anthony Brown's true identity. He's not who he claims to be. Anthony Brown is actually Tony Morelli, from a different social class, reinventing himself. He was genuinely in love with Rosemary, but was she using him? And does his false identity suggest he's hiding something darker? Ruth Lessing's devotion. George's secretary has been in love with him for years. Quietly, patiently, hopelessly in love. Rosemary stood between them. With Rosemary dead, Ruth had George's attention, his dependence, his daily presence. But would she kill for that? Iris's hidden feelings. The younger sister, always overshadowed, always second best. Did she resent Rosemary enough to kill her? And what about her feelings for Anthony Brown? There's a connection there. Something brewing between them. George's discovery. Before he died, George had uncovered something. What was it? He had planned to reveal the killer at the dinner. Did the murderer strike first to silence him? Each person at that table had secrets. Each person had motives. Christie weaves a web so complex that every revelation seems to point in a different direction. One of Christie's specialties was the mechanics of murder. She was famously knowledgeable about poisons, and in Sparkling Cyanide, she showcases this expertise. Cyanide poisoning is dramatic and fast. Symptoms appear within seconds. Difficulty breathing, gasping, loss of consciousness, and death within minutes. It's a poison that doesn't give the victim time to call for help or reveal their murderer. But how is it administered? This is the crucial question. At Rosemary's birthday dinner, the poison was in her champagne glass. But who put it there? Everyone at the table had access to the glasses before they were filled. The restaurant was crowded, people moving about, waiters serving. A moment's distraction was all that was needed. George's murder was even more puzzling. He was vigilant, watching for danger. He knew someone at that table was a killer. How did they poison him under such circumstances? Race discovers something crucial. The cyanide was in the form of crystals, carefully ground to dissolve quickly in liquid. This required premeditation and access to the poison. Not everyone could obtain potassium cyanide easily. The investigation focuses on who had opportunity, who had access to cyanide, and who had the knowledge to use it effectively. What makes Sparkling Cyanide particularly fascinating is Christie's exploration of the psychological aspect of murder. The killer in this story isn't a cold-blooded psychopath. They're driven by a complex mixture of emotions: love, fear, ambition, self-preservation. Christie makes us understand, if not sympathize, with the murderer's motivations. There's also the psychological impact on the survivors. Iris is traumatized, living with the knowledge that she dimed the murderer twice. Anthony Brown is torn between his feelings for Iris and his determination to find justice for Rosemary. Ruth Lessing is grieving George, the man she loved but could never have. Colonel Race understands that solving this case requires understanding the human heart's capacity for both love and murder. He digs into relationships, past traumas, hidden desires. He's not just solving a puzzle, he's unraveling human psychology. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source: Iris Morley. Iris, traumatized and frightened, begins to remember details from both dinners. Small things, insignificant at the time, now take on new meaning. A look exchanged between two people. A hand reaching for a glass. A moment when someone's attention was deliberately diverted. She also remembers conversations with Rosemary before her death. Rosemary had been frightened, yes, but she'd also been planning something. She'd talked about starting fresh, about ending something that had gone on too long. Colonel Race pieces together Iris's fragments of memory with his own observations and the physical evidence. And suddenly, the picture becomes clear. The killer had multiple motives. Rosemary knew something dangerous, something that could destroy them. She also represented a threat in other ways, emotionally, socially, financially. George, in his investigation, had discovered the truth. He had to die before he could reveal it. But who? Which of the suspects sitting at that table was desperate enough, calculating enough, to commit not one but two murders? This is where I need to be careful. For those who haven't read the book, the revelation is genuinely shocking. Christie plants red herrings so skillfully that the true culprit often escapes suspicion until final reveal. Colonel Race gathers everyone together, the classic drawing room revelation scene that Christie made famous. He methodically dismantles each person's alibi and motive, showing how the murders could have been committed. The poisoner is revealed to be someone who had access to both victims, opportunity at both dinners, and a powerful motive that encompassed both self-preservation and ambition. What makes the revelation particularly chilling is how normal the killer appears. They're not a monster, not obviously evil. They're someone who made a choice, then another choice, and found themselves on a path where murder seemed like the only solution. The method was ingenious. The killer used confusion and social conventions of a formal dinner to their advantage. They exploited people's trust, their distraction, their unwillingness to suspect someone close to them. The cyanide was administered in a way that required intimate knowledge of the victim's habits and careful timing. It was planned meticulously, not a crime of passion, but of cold calculation. Understanding the motive is crucial to appreciating Christie's psychological depth in this novel. The killer wasn't driven by simple greed or straightforward jealousy. Their motive was complex, layered, and ultimately tragic. They were protecting a carefully constructed life, a position in society, a future they'd worked hard to build. Rosemary was a threat to all of that. She knew secrets that could destroy everything. Perhaps she was blackmailing the killer, or perhaps she simply possessed knowledge that, if revealed, would be devastating. But there's more to it than that. The killer also felt genuinely wronged. They believed, in their twisted logic, that they were the real victim. Rosemary had caused them pain, threatened what they held dear. In the killer's mind, murder wasn't just necessary, it was justified. George's murder was pure self-preservation. He'd uncovered the truth about Rosemary's death. He had to be silenced before he could reveal it. Christie doesn't excuse the murders, but she makes us understand the human weakness that led to them. The killer is someone who couldn't bear to lose what they gained, who valued their position above human life, who convinced themselves that murder was a solution rather than a crime. Sparkling Cyanide isn't just a murder mystery. It's an exploration of several profound themes. The masks we wear, every character in this novel is hiding something. They present one face to the world while concealing their true selves. Christie asks, how well do we really know anyone? The person smiling at us across the dinner table might be harboring murderous thoughts. The destructive power of beauty. Rosemary's beauty was both her greatest asset and her downfall. It attracted people to her, but also made her a target. Christie explores how beauty can be isolating, how it can prevent genuine connection, how it can inspire both love and hatred. The price of ambition. Several characters sacrifice their humanity on the altar of ambition. They want success, status, security so badly that they're willing to destroy anyone who threatens it. Christie shows us the dark side of aspiration. The nature of love. Is it love that drives the killer or possessiveness? Is Ruth's devotion to George really love or obsession? Was Rosemary capable of love or just infatuation? Christie dissects different forms of love and asks which are genuine. Justice versus revenge. George's attempt to trap the killer isn't about legal justice. It's personal, emotional, driven by grief and anger. Christie explores a fine line between seeking justice and pursuing revenge. Let's talk about why Sparkling Cyanide is such an effective mystery. First, Christie's use of dual murders is brilliant. The first murder, Rosemary's, happened before the story begins. We learn about it through flashbacks and other characters' memories. This allows Christie to control information flow, revealing details precisely when needed for maximum impact. The second murder, George's, happens in real time, and we're right there with the characters, experiencing the shock and horror. This creates two different types of tension and keeps readers engaged. Second, Christie's characterization is superb. Each suspect is fully realized, with complex motivations and believable psychology. We understand why each person might be the killer, which keeps us guessing until the end. Third, the setting, elegant restaurants, upper-class society, formal dinners, creates a fascinating contrast. Murder amidst champagne and caviar, death at a birthday celebration. Christie uses this juxtaposition to heighten the horror. Fourth, the use of Colonel Race as detective is effective. He's experienced, intelligent, but not infallible. He doesn't solve everything instantly. He makes observations, follows leads, and gradually pieces a puzzle together in a way that feels realistic. Finally, Christie plants clues fairly. Everything needed to solve the mystery is present in the story. Readers who pay attention can theoretically identify the killer before the revelation. This is a hallmark of great detective fiction. After the killer is unmasked, there's still the question of justice. Will they face legal consequences? Can they be prosecuted based on the evidence available? Christie doesn't always give us tidy endings. Sometimes the killer escapes legal justice, though they might face other consequences. Sometimes they're caught and tried. Sometimes they meet their own form of poetic justice. In Sparkling Cyanide, the resolution is both satisfying and thought-provoking. The truth is revealed, but the aftermath leaves scars on everyone involved. The survivors must find a way to move forward, carrying the knowledge of what happened. Iris and Anthony Brown, who developed feelings for each other throughout the ordeal, must decide if their relationship can survive being born from such tragedy. Can love flourish when its foundation is murder and grief? Ruth Lessing must confront her own role in events. Her devotion to George, while not criminal, contributed to the tragedy. She must live with that knowledge. The Faradays must deal with the public revelation of their secrets. Their carefully maintained facade has crumbled. What happens to Stephen's political career? Can their marriage survive? Christie shows us that solving a murder doesn't erase its impact. The ripples spread outward, affecting everyone touched by the crime. So why, decades after its publication, does Sparkling Cyanide still captivate readers? Because Agatha Christie understood something fundamental about human nature. We're all capable of both good and evil. We all have secrets. We all wear masks. And under the right circumstances, with the right pressures, anyone might break. Her mysteries aren't just puzzles to be solved. They're examinations of the human condition. She asks, what would you do to protect what you love? How far would you go to preserve your position? Where is your moral line, and what would it take to cross it? Sparkling Cyanide specifically resonates because it's about identity and perception. Rosemary wasn't who people thought she was. The killer hides behind respectability. Everyone at that table has a secret self. In our age of social media, where everyone presents a curated version of themselves to the world, this theme feels more relevant than ever. We're all performing, all hiding parts of ourselves, all presenting the face we want others to see. Christie also reminds us that evil doesn't always announce itself. It can wear elegant clothes, speak politely, sit across the dinner table from us. The most dangerous people are often those we never suspect. This novel is a masterclass in misdirection, characterization, and plot construction. It's Christie at her best. Intelligent, surprising, psychologically astute, and deeply entertaining. But before we end today's episode, I want to leave you with something to think about. Here's my question for you. If you were invited to that dinner party at the Luxembourg Restaurant, knowing that someone at the table was a murderer, would you go? Would you trust your instincts to identify the killer? Or would you realize that the most dangerous person might be the one you'd never suspect? The charming dinner companion, the devoted friend, the respectable professional sitting right next to you? Think about it. Because Christie's genius lies in showing us that monsters don't always look monstrous. Sometimes they're sitting across from us, raising a champagne glass in our honor. Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me, Who would you suspect at that table? And more importantly, would you drink the champagne? And if you enjoyed diving deep into this classic mystery with me today, don't let this be our last dinner together. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we're just getting started with our journey through the dark, brilliant mind of Agatha Christie and other master mystery writers. Every week, we'll be uncovering new mysteries, dissecting plot twists, and exploring the psychology behind literature's most fascinating murders. From Poirot to Miss Marple, from locked room mysteries to psychological thrillers, we're going to explore them all. So subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and never miss an episode. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what we're uncovering next week. And remember, in the world of Agatha Christie, everyone's a suspect, even you. Until next time, keep your mysteries fictional, your champagne safe, and your suspicions sharp. This has been your deep dive into sparkling cyanide. I'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and let me know in the comments which Christie mystery you want us to explore next.